we are trying to understand a sequence of events. Certain regions of India will have better or higher rainfall. Every single thing in this world cannot be measured using numbers. The word variable is a very interesting topic in statistics. So discrete variables are one which has certain specific value. Any data that we are talking about will have a frequency distribution. We have the frequency distribution. Good morning and welcome to the new session on Chapter 3, Organization of Data. This is a very important chapter in economics. Why? Because we are now going to understand how data needs to be organized, how things need to be kept in manner so that we are able to analyze, we are able to understand, and we are able to take it forward the way it needs to be done. So not wasting much of your time, let's quickly move into the number of topics that we are going to see today in this chapter. So these are going to be the topics that we are going to look into. The first one would be the introduction. We're going to talk about raw data, classification of data, the chronological classification, one of the very important things, how you're going to arrange, spatial classification, attributes and qualities. Then we're going to talk about variables. This is quite an interesting topic because you are going to carry forward this word in the entire half of economics. So you need to understand what is variables, continuous and discrete variables. And then moving forward, we have the frequency distribution, how to prepare a frequency distribution table, tally marking, very interesting one, what we learned in our childhood days, loss of information, that's also very important. Then we're going to talk about frequency distribution in unequal class, quite a different topic. And then we're going to talk about frequency array and a bivariate frequency. So we got quite a lot of topics in this chapter to cover. Each one of them are very interesting. Each one of them have a deep meaning in terms of connecting statistics to economics. So just moving forward, at the base level, let's start with the introduction. We're going to talk about why do we need to organize data. I have three factors that are very important for us in order to organize the data. The first one, the need for organizing data, classification and its importance, and arrangement techniques. Now, if you look in our daily walk of life, it is quite evident that we are surrounded by information. We are living in an ocean of information. We do not know which one is right, which one is wrong, why do we need to pick that information, and what do we need to do with that information. So always we are confused with the factor how to get the right information at the right time. So as an economist, as a student of economics, you need to understand how to arrange the data, how to keep the data in the way it needs to be kept so that you are able to analyze and understand the meaningful information out of it. So that is why arrangement of data is very important altogether. Now moving forward, raw data. This word itself is quite important for us. The moment when I use the word raw data, what does it mean? The unclassified data is called as raw data. So we are going to underline that word, unclassified data. Now the moment when I use this word unclassified, that means to say that it has not been segregated, it has not been put in place, it is not arranged, it is not being done properly. So if you have a look into the board here where you would be able to see the example here, it's a raw data. You see a lot of numbers that are being filled on an Excel sheet, and this talks about some data. It talks about dish 1, dish 2, some kind of data that has been collected from an Excel sheet. Now, for a researcher, the data that is being projected here on the entire screen does not make any sense unless and until there is a clear-cut specification trying to tell what is this data and why are we using this data. So the most important thing that we need to understand is that 90% of our time in economics we deal with raw data. We don't deal with classified data. We just look into different sources of information, like it might be a social media, it might be internet, it might be any form of published journals where we get a lot of data that keeps floating around in and out. But then we are not able to make a meaningful information. We just look at the newspaper every day morning. You get hundreds and thousands of data floating around, but we do not know, is the information right? Is the information classified? Is the information meaningful? So they are all raw data for us, which is just being printed, which is just being showcased to us. Moving forward. Now we have the collection of data. So the collection of data depends on the requirement of the researcher. This word is very, very, very important. Requirement of the researcher. Now there are many people in this world, when they study the subject of economics, the most interesting question that comes into their mind is why? Because when you start studying economics, you need to understand each and every piece of information cannot be just taken for an assumption or for granted. You need to ask the question why. Why is it happening like that? What is the reason behind it? So that means the data that is being collected and that is going to be presented to you needs to be understood, analyzed and clearly presented. So the person who's doing that research, who's trying to analyze it, who's trying to go with that flow, needs to understand the type of data he's collecting and why is he collecting that data, how he needs to look into it. So that is why we have the type of classification. We have two types here. One is called as the chronological and the second one is called as the spatial collection or the spatial classification. Let's have a quick look into what do we mean by a chronological and a spatial. Now, moving forward, you look into the chronological data. Now, when you look into the word itself, chronological, this is a word that is being derived from the history. Why I would like to use that word here is that in history, when we study, we are trying to understand a sequence of events which has happened over a period of time. History never happens at one random given instance. It happens over a period of time. So if you look into history, starting from the olden ages, then you talk about medieval period, then you talk about modern times, everywhere there is a sequence of time. So the chronological order is also something based on the sequence of time. It is arranged. So if you start looking into the data here, it starts from 1910 and goes all the way till 2000. So the data is arranged very clearly, starting from the year 1910 and it goes till 2000. So we are going to see a data which is about 90 years worth. So that's what is being represented here. So there's a sequence. It starts with a particular sequence and it goes in the order of 10 years. So 1910, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 and then it moves up to 2000. So there is a sequence in which we are trying to move. That is what is the importance of chronological order. It moves with a sequence. It moves with an order. It has a sequential timing basis altogether. Now, moving forward. Now, we're going to talk about this word called as the spatial classification. With the advent of geographic information system, what I call it as GIS. Now, most of us, we are the users of Google. We are the users of different products of Google, like Google Map. And we have the directions that are being taken there. Now we have apps like Map My Direction, Map My Route and all those factors. Now the word spatial classification is something that is related to geography. So that's why I would like all of you to pay attention and look into this graph or the diagram that is being shown here. Now you would like to have a look into this diagram that has been shown here. This talks about a locality, about a geographical location or a place which is trying to represent some street, road, water bodies or colonies or something that is being projected here. Now that's exactly what we try to mean or intend by a spatial classification, which means to say that there is some classification of data which is based on geography, on the location where you are located, on the area where you are located, the background where you come from in terms of the area, in terms of the geography altogether. Why is this kind of data important? Because in economics, in statistics particularly, there are many a times when data is being collected to a particular region or to a particular area. You cannot say that the data is common and applicable to all parts of the country or all parts of the nation. So we try to classify information based on the area, on the geographic location. To give you a very simple example, now for example, if there is a flood that happened in the state of Bihar, that happens in the state of Assam, that same flood data might not be applicable to the state of Tamil Nadu or Karnataka or Kerala, because they are different geographical locations. So for example, when you start mapping the weather conditions, it's again based on the geographic region. Certain regions of India will have better or higher rainfall. Certain regions of India do not get much rainfall. That's because of the geographical information system, the environmental conditions. So we try to analyze data based on the spatial classification altogether. Now moving forward, attributes or qualities. What is that makes you a human being is a very, very important question that you would like to ask yourself. There are many qualities, there are many factors that you would like to ask yourself. So the attributes or qualities are certain things that are imbibed, that are learned, that are developed, that are something which need to be clearly understood out of a human being. So let us try to understand this attribute or the quality factor. Let's start with a very simple factor like sense of humor, insightful, honest, being polite, fun, organized, patient. So there are many kinds of attributes and qualities that we can talk about. In any human being who is born on this earth, he might be having some of these qualities, all of these qualities, or very few of these qualities, but then there would be something that is inbuilt in him, and there are certain things that starts developing over a period of time. So now what happens here is that these are certain things which cannot be expressed quantitatively. That's why I want you to understand this line very clearly. Every single thing in this world cannot be measured using numbers. So numbers does not apply everywhere. That is a very important thing. It cannot be applied everywhere because numbers are things that can be applied to a set of data but not to every walk of life. So here when we talk about the qualitative factors, when we talk about an attribute of a person, when we try to talk about a specific characteristics of a person, this quantitative data cannot come. It is only a qualitative data. So when you want to measure a personality, when you want to understand a person, when you want to understand a group, when you want to understand an ethnic, a religion, whatever kind of factors, there you cannot just go by numbers. You need to understand the factors that govern them. So that's where we say the word qualitative data. We don't use the word quantitative. On the other side, we use the word as qualitative data. Moving forward, variables. The word variable is a very interesting topic in statistics. So what is the concept behind variable? Variables are ones which tend to vary based on specification. The word variable itself tries to tell us that it will keep changing, it will keep varying altogether. So that is a very interesting concept altogether. Why? Because when you write a variable, let's say x or y, all these are variable. What is the value of x? What is the value of y? We do not know. Why? Because the value of x or the value of y will depend upon the data to which the value has been assigned. Suppose you are going to assign a value like, let's say, x is equal to 10 or y is equal to 5. Now you will be able to tell me the value of x or the value of y. But initially, if people just ask you what is the value of x, what is the value of y, you do not know because values are not assigned. It will keep changing according to the need of the equation, according to the need of the situation. So that's why variables are one that will keep on changing depending on the situation. That word is very, very important. These are not ones which are something will remain constant forever or will remain in a particular direction or aligned to a particular way of doing. They will keep on changing according to the need of the specific situation or of the specific criteria altogether. Now in that variable you have two factors. One, you have a continuous variable that can take any numerical value, and second, you have a discrete variable that can take only certain values. Now continuous variable, moment the word that itself says that it keeps on moving, it keeps on changing at a rapid pace. A discrete variable is one where we select certain specific values. Now for example, if I'm going to say my age is equal to 50, so that's a discrete variable. You cannot write your name in the place of age. You cannot write your name as some numbers. So discrete variables are one which has certain specific value. So that is why it matters a lot when we are going to talk about continuous variable and the discrete variable altogether. Now moving forward. Now, this is the example for a continuous variable. Now, as I told you, continuous variables are one which will keep on moving at a particular pace, at a particular level altogether. So, when you have a closer look at the graph, you see that the variable has continuously moved from 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So, it has been making a rapid stride progress. It's continuously moving at a particular pace. It is continuously moving at a particular alignment altogether. So the concept of continuous variable itself tells us that the data will not remain constant and the numerical value will keep on changing at a particular level altogether. So that is why we call this as continuous variable, the one which will keep on changing and can take any numerical value altogether. Now moving forward. Now we have a discrete variable. Now what is a discrete variable? As I have told you, it can take only specific values. It cannot take everything. It cannot be accepted for any kind of value. So if you look into the graph again here, there are certain specific values. Now when I'm going to talk about the word called proportion, so I say that it is under proportion, 17%, it is 4%, it is 9%. So there is some value that has been assigned. They are discrete. They are that instant values. They can be taking only those kind of particular values. You cannot suddenly give them any kind of values. You cannot say that you can take anything. Now for example, if anybody is going to ask you what is the time, so time is divided by 24 hours. That's what we all know, and that's what is the universal truth is. So the time should be starting from 0, that's the midnight, till 23:59. That's what we are typically trying to talk about. So that is a discrete value. It has to be within that range. It has to be within that specific range or within that particular value altogether. Nobody can go and write what is the time. If anybody comes and asks you, you can't write 25:29, 25 hours and 29 seconds. That's not the way how you write. The time is always between 24 hours. So that is a discrete variable, one that takes a particular value only. Moving forward. Now, we have the frequency distribution. Any data that we are talking about will have a frequency distribution altogether. Why we are talking about the frequency distribution? It's because frequency distribution is the way how the data is going to be classified or the data is going to be put across altogether. Now, if you have a closer look into the table, you see that there are two variables that are given, x and y, and they are written in a particular format here. Some values are being given. On the first observation, you see that x value is 28, y value is 72. So like this, you are able to get a frequency distribution, a level at which the data is being written down. Similarly, up to 20 observation, there is some value for x and y that is written. So the frequency distribution is a one which will try to make you understand how to classify the raw variables into a quantitative variable. table. So now when you look into this graph, you will be able to understand, when you look into the table, you will be able to understand for an observation 1, there are two kinds of value that has been generated. For the variable x, there is some value called 28. For the variable y, there is some value called 72 that has been generated. So what are we trying to understand here, or what are we trying to generate or trying to justify here is that frequency distribution itself, the data is getting distributed, the data is getting classified, the data is going to be put in a particular manner so that it has some quantitative variable factor there. So that is why frequency distribution is very, very important when it comes to the factor of understanding the statistics and economics altogether. Now, how to prepare? How can you prepare a frequency distribution? Let's say that tomorrow in the class somebody comes and asks you that will you be able to create a frequency table, or you are getting a project work where you need to create a frequency table. So what will be my first thought? What will be my first question? How many classes we need to have? Which means to say that, let's say we are going to create a frequency table like this. So how many classes we need to have? Now we are going to have within a particular range, let's say 0 to 10, 10 to 20. So how many classes will be? Now what is the size of each of these classes? That is also very, very important. How should we determine the limits? Is it that you always want it in 10 series, or you want it in 5 series, or you want it in 20 series? So what is that class limit all about? And how should we get the frequency for each other? So what would be the frequency? Would it be in a sequential manner, non-sequential manner, a random kind of a thing, or will you take only a particular set of variables? So all those questions are something that keep running in your mind because you are trying to understand the flow, the concept of the distribution of data. Now many a times when you read newspaper, you would see that there are tables that are being put across for our country trying to tell about the growth or the GDP pattern of a particular state, the employment rate in particular states altogether. Now in all those criteria, in all those categories, you will see a huge amount of numbers. You will see that there are many columns, many rows, they are being distributed in a particular sequence, they are being written in a particular format. That is because they are trying to put the data according to the frequency distribution. So it is very, very clear and mandatory for you to understand what type of classes you are going to address, what is the size of each of the class, how do you determine the frequency, and how do you get the frequency for each other. So these are all the things that need to be done in a phase-wise manner. You will not be able to do it just by a single line classification, but you need to do it in a phase-wise manner altogether. Moving forward. Now, frequency distribution table as a part of your statistics. Now, if you look here, you can see class interval. So this is what we were talking about in the previous slide. So we have taken the class interval in 4 series, 70 to 74, 74 to 79, and there is a class boundary where you have written it comes even with decimal points. There is a class mark and there is a frequency. Now, what does the frequency say? This many number of times it has been repeated. So when you say that the class marks 72, there are about 8 people who have got it. When you say about in this range of 77, there are 8 people. 82, there are 5 people. So like this, when you try to understand the frequency modulation, the frequency table that has been given, you will be able to understand at what levels, at what intervals, at what pace things are happening for you, so that you will be able to match and you will be able to put it forward altogether. So this is very, very important for us. Why? Because statistically, when you start understanding a table, understanding a format altogether, this matters a lot. This matters a lot because you will be able to understand that whatever you write down in the form of a table will have a high meaning in terms of statistics. Now, tally marking. This is something that we started learning at our childhood days. We used to learn counting by this way, a simple way. How do you represent the number 5? So you used to write 1, 2, 3, 4 and then 5. So this is how you used to do it with a frequency lining altogether. So if you have to count the number 50, you will get actually 10 marks like this. So you will try to put it in 10 columns, 10 times you will draw it, and you will keep on putting it representing the value called as your tally marking. Tally marking is a very simple form of counting the variables, counting the data. So you can see the representation. 1 means a single line, 2 means double line, 3 means 3 lines, 4, and it keeps on going. For 5 onwards, you start putting it into a particular matter. This is a very simple and an interesting way of how children learn counting, how children learn to understand the frequency distribution altogether. And this way of counting is considered to be the principal or the basic way in statistics to keep account of the data. Sometimes this becomes very useful for us. Why? Because this is the way it will be easier for us to interpret and understand the data that is being given to us. So tally marking is still considered to be one of the basic formats in statistics for understanding the data and organizing it. Moving forward, we're going to talk about loss of information, the data loss altogether. Now, when we are in a country like India, there are hundreds and thousands of opinions that keep flowing around in a system. Many times people tend to forget or tend to understand this in a different manner altogether. So where is the actual information? Where is the actual meaning? Where is the actual system altogether? Why? Because the real data, the real meaning, or the real information sometimes gets lost, gets disconnected in a large system, in a flow of information, and we are unable to trace it. So that's why when you see the diagram, one of the most important factor is the data loss itself. Data gets sometimes disconnected, it is not available, you are not able to interpret. For the researcher, it becomes even more confusing. So in statistics, we always give a very important factor for this word called as loss of information. Suppose if the information is lost, or you do not have evident information critical enough, you are not able to justify it, then automatically, statistically, you will not be able to prove it. So there is always a factor that you need to keep in your back of your mind, that in case if you are losing out on data, if there is a loss of information that is happening, then you will not be able to take up the matter properly and not be able to disperse it all along. So loss of information will play a crucial role, will play a very important role in terms of understanding and organizing the data. So we should be very careful that we store the information properly, we store the information in the correct manner, and it should be accessible and it should be available for all, so that everybody is able to understand the information clearly. Now moving forward, frequency distribution of unequal factors. Now this is very important, of the unequal classes altogether. Now if you look into the table or the graph that is being given here, there is a sudden spike which is going up, and then again there is a fall in the data. So this is unequal. This data, if you try to understand, is not flowing with a sequence. It is not flowing in a manner where it has to be done. It is not going exactly in the way that was expected. So what happens here is that people start getting worried. People start asking this question, why is this data happening like this? Why is that the data is not being in a particular manner altogether? The reason is that the distribution of unequal classes altogether. So that is where you will see that the data is not arranged in the way it has to be arranged. The data is rather arranged in a manner, in a most haphazard manner. It is just happening because people want it to happen. People are just interested in doing it. So they would have just collected the data and put it as an unequal class distribution. Suddenly there is a spike, suddenly there is a flow down, all it happens. Now it is not to be blamed blamed on the researcher altogether. Please understand that when it comes to the word unequal classes, that means there is no proper balance in the data. There might be times, there might be situation where the data will have its own trend altogether. Now this kind of data is not a biased data or it is not an incorrect data. It is only the flow that matters. Sometimes the flow might be so erratic in nature that you might not be able to get the value at any given point of time. So that is why it is very, very important that we try to understand the frequency distribution of unequal classes. Now, the frequency array, that's also a very, very important thing that you would need to understand. Now, if you look into the frequency array, there are factors in what way you have put the array, the matrix 10, 20, again you see a 10 number, then you start seeing a 4, 50, 10. So now you would start seeing that this is being arranged in a particular manner. This is being arranged in a particular sequence altogether. So when you start looking into the table itself, you will be able to see that there is some flow, there is some sequence, there is some manner in which it goes. So the way array itself is arrangement. That's why I would always like to stress upon this word called as arrangement, because arrangement matters a lot when it comes to the frequency. You need to arrange the data in a particular manner. You need to put it in a particular way so that there is a sequencing that happens altogether in the organization of data. Now, we are also going to talk about bivariate frequency altogether. Now, what is a bivariate frequency? Where you have multiple data, where you have the combination of x and y together. So now two variables. The word bi means, that means there are two variable factors here. So let us look into this factor x and another factor y. So if you look into the table, x value is 2, y value is 3. So 2 into 3 is 6. Automatically now if you start looking, it changes the value altogether. So that is why this is very, very important for us to understand how the value keeps changing. Bivariate means there are two combination factor, there are two things that keeps happening together. So that is why the bivariate frequency is a combination of two variables put together. So you can see there are multiple combinations where we will be talking about it in the higher levels of statistics, but at this level you just need to know the combination of two variables alone. That's why we call it as bivariate frequency table. With that, we come to the end of today's session. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful session. I hope and believe that this session was highly interesting, informative and educative. In the coming forward sessions, we shall be learning more about the usage of statistics, and we shall also see how data gets interpreted in economics and the value of data. Until then, goodbye and good luck. Stay tuned, stay blessed and stay enlightened. Thank you once again. It representing the value called as your tally marking. Tally marking is a very, very simple form of counting the variables, counting the data. So you can see the representation. 1 means a single line, 2 means double line, 3 means 3 lines, 4, and it keeps on going. For 5 onwards, you start putting it into a particular matter. This is a very, very simple and an interesting way of how children learn counting, how children learn to understand the frequency distribution altogether. And this way of counting is considered to be the principal or the basic way in statistics to keep account of the data. Sometimes this becomes very, very useful for us. Why? Because this is the way it will be easier for us to interpret and understand the data that is being given to us. So tally marking is still considered to be one of the basic formats in statistics for understanding the data and organizing it. Moving forward, we're going to talk about loss of information, the data loss altogether. Now, when we are in a country like India, there are hundreds and thousands of opinions that keep flowing around in a system. Many a times people tend to forget or tend to understand this in a different manner altogether. So where is the actual information? Where is the actual meaning? Where is the actual system altogether? Why? Because the real data, the real meaning, or the real information sometimes gets lost, gets disconnected in a large system, in a flow of information, and we are unable to trace it. So that's why when you see the diagram, one of the most important factor is the data loss itself. Data gets sometimes disconnected, it is not available, you are not able to interpret. For the researcher, it becomes even more confusing. So in statistics, we always give a very important factor for this word called as loss of information. Suppose if the information is lost, or you do not have evident information critical enough, you are not able to justify it, then automatically, statistically, you will not be able to prove it. So there is always a factor that you need to keep in your back of your mind, that in case if you are losing out on data, if there is a loss of information that is happening, then you will not be able to take up the matter properly and not be able to disperse it all along. So loss of information will play a crucial role, will play a very important role in terms of understanding and organizing the data. So we should be very careful that we store the information properly, we store the information in the correct manner, and it should be accessible and it should be available for all, so that everybody is able to understand the information clearly. Now moving forward, frequency distribution of unequal factors. Now this is very important, of the unequal classes altogether. Now if you look into the table or the graph that is being given here, there is a sudden spike which is going up, and then again there is a fall in the data. So this is unequal. This data, if you try to understand, is not flowing with a sequence. It is not flowing in a manner where it has to be done. It is not going exactly in the way that was expected. So what happens here is that people start getting worried. People start asking this question, why is this data happening like this? Why is that the data is not being in a particular manner altogether? The reason is that the distribution of unequal classes altogether. So that is where you will see that the data is not arranged in the way it has to be arranged. The data is rather arranged in a manner, in a most haphazard manner. It is just happening because people want it to happen. People are just interested in doing it. So they would have just collected the data and put it as an unequal class distribution. Suddenly there is a spike, suddenly there is a flow down, all it happens. Now it is not to be blamed on the researcher altogether. Please understand that when it comes to the word unequal classes, that means there is no proper balance in the data. There might be times, there might be situation where the data will have its own trend altogether. Now this kind of data is not a biased data, or it is not an incorrect data. It is only the flow that matters. Sometimes the flow might be so erratic in nature that you might not be able to get the value at any given point of time. So that is why it is very important that we try to understand the frequency distribution of unequal classes. Now the frequency array, that's also a very important thing that you would need to understand. Now if you look into the frequency array, there are factors in what way you have put the array, the matrix 10, 20, again you see a 10 number, then you start seeing a 4, 50, 10. So now you would start seeing that this is being arranged in a particular manner. This is being arranged in a particular sequence altogether. So when you start looking into the table itself, you will be able to see that there is some flow, there is some sequence, there is some manner in which it goes. So the way array itself is arrangement. That's why I would always like to stress upon this word called as arrangement, because arrangement matters a lot when it comes to the frequency. You need to arrange the data in a particular manner. You need to put it in a particular way so that there is a sequencing that happens altogether in the organization of data. Now, we are also going to talk about bivariate frequency altogether. Now, what is a bivariate frequency? Where you have multiple data, where you have the combination of x and y together. So now two variables. The word bi means there are two variable factors here. So let us look into this factor x and another factor y. So if you look into the table, x value is 2, y value is 3. So 2 into 3 is 6. Automatically now if you start looking, it changes the value altogether. So that is why this is very, very important for us to understand how the value keeps changing. Bivariate means there are two combination factor, there are two things that keeps happening together. So that is why the bivariate frequency is a combination of two variables put together. So you can see there are multiple combinations where we will be talking about it in the higher levels of statistics, but at this level you just need to know the combination of two variables alone. That's why we call it as bivariate frequency table. With that, we come to the end of today's session. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful session. I hope and believe that this session was highly interesting, informative and educative. In the coming forward sessions, we shall be learning more about the usage of statistics, and we shall also see how data gets interpreted in economics and the value of data. Until then, goodbye and good luck. Stay tuned, stay blessed and stay enlightened. Thank you once again.